Can I start with you, Your Excellency? I know that ICT for you has been one of the pillars that you use to rebuild your country and in many ways create a new Rwanda. And I just wonder, the journey has been remarkable. It's been lauded across many spheres. And so maybe the question is, what happens next? What are the next big steps do you think that we need to take to get into that next level?
Thank you. Let me first of all thank the audience, the honorable ministers from our region and beyond in the wider continent. I want to thank the Secretary General of ITU, Amadou Toure, and the young people together with us, and yourself for this very moment. And if I may, let me also follow that with a bit of context. Why we are here, why we are talking about what we are talking about. First, we are talking about transformation. It's a transformation of lives of our people, the continents, the African lives. So we've been struggling between reducing or eliminating poverty altogether and growth that should feed into the development that we want. And therefore, we find many things that can help achieve that. One of them being, and very significantly so, digital innovation. And it is to be found, therefore, between fighting poverty and growth. And most importantly, it does that by being applicable to any and every sector that contributes to this growth we are talking about. So, apart from the practicality of it, or the practice of it, we are also talking about the mindset. We Rwandans, we Africans, understanding where we are coming from and where we want to be, we must be having on top of the list in our minds to deal with this problem and believing that we can deal with it. And therefore, digital innovation, if we believe that it contributes significantly to this growth and applies to every sector and will reduce poverty, and we put our minds to it, then it should work. It should work for us. So that's why, and that's where we are really coming from. It's about the investments we have made and continue to make in infrastructure area. It's the investments we make in educating our people and giving them the training and also the awareness of what digital innovations constitute in terms of our objectives and our vision. So really the next big thing, if you will, happens almost every day through these innovations, but more importantly, it is to be able to stay the course once you have started. We have started making the investments that we need to make. We understand from the statistics you were quoting, the Secretary General mentioned, these statistics are real. They are not myths, they are real. These are things that can be quantified. So we need, therefore, to capture all this in our minds and make sure that through these innovations, through the investments we are making, we lay a very firm foundation, and we have done so to an extent, whether it is Rwanda or the countries in the East African region or the whole continent, and therefore, well, beyond maybe they have done better, and therefore stay the course knowing what it means in terms of this journey of transformation we are talking about. So the next big thing lies in everyday activity, in building on the foundation and making sure that the lives are transformed. That's the big thing.
Okay. Mr. President, thank you very much indeed. If I could turn to you, Dr. Toure. This time last year, the Smart Africa Manifesto was adopted. And so I'm wondering now, how do you see the commitments that were made in this manifesto, perhaps helping raise the stakes, as it were, in this digital innovation?
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm here this week after launching on last Sunday in New York with, together with President Kagame, the countdown for my 100 days in office, my last 100 days in office. And I take the opportunity to thank President Kagame for the leadership, for the support that he has given me. First, to be elected, to be the first sub-Saharan African to be elected at the head of, as head of ITU. And second, for accompanying me throughout my tenure as Secretary General, will be 8 years. And third, for having made it successful. I'm very grateful for also the leadership taken here in Rwanda in terms of the progress made in ICT. As you said, we have quoted a number of statistics. Africa has grown from what it was quoted back in 15 years ago, from having less telephones than the city of New York alone, the whole of Africa. And 15 years later, there are more telephones in Africa than in the whole of the United States. So that's a big progress made. And it takes leadership to do so. First, it needs a vision. And the vision has to be translated into policy and a regulatory framework. Industry is always there, and that's why we launched back in 2007 the Connect Africa Summit here. It was the first of a series of Connect the World that we did here, and it was a very successful one, having led to the investment that we've seen in the continent, over $70 billion investment over 5 years' time. In 2013, we decided, under the leadership of President Kagame, again, to go one step further in ensuring that we go from Connect Africa, which was leading to the Millennium Development Goals, to now a smart Africa, transforming Africa in making sure that Africa also will be there for the post-2015 Sustainable Development Agenda. And this is the reason behind putting together an ambitious plan like this, like we did. And we were not disappointed because we had leaders who dared to come and dream big for the continent. And together we are moving forward. Today we have ministers from South Sudan here, from Uganda, from Kenya, and we have representatives of the ministries from Gabon and Burkina Faso in this room. Their presidents were here at a time to reaffirm their commitment. This morning I've been asked, what do we do about converting the unconverted? I said, we do nothing about them. We don't have time for that. We have enough converted on the continent to move forward enough with them. And that's the leadership that we've received. Now we have to turn this leadership vision into action. And that's what the Smart Africa Manifesto is about, in turning that into a real action plan. And as Minister Jean-Philbert Nsengimana said, we have now drafted the roadmap for it, and we're starting action. And Smart Rwanda Days that happen here is the first of the series. We hope each and every country in Africa will come and join us and make their own Smart Country Days, so that we come together, just like we did here over the past 2 days, share experiences, good and bad ones, so that no one has to reinvent something that was invented already, or no one should make mistakes that were made elsewhere by lack of information. After all, as we said, we are in the information society. And our next step is the knowledge society. We've been late in the industrial age. We did catch up a little bit with in the digital age. I think for the knowledge age that we are going into, I believe that Africa will be there on time with everybody else. And we have the right resources here in the continent, and many of them are here in this room, the younger generation, that we believe in them, and they're represented here by two. I'm very glad that I'm really speaking before them, because if they do speak before me, I will be speechless, I know, because I know they speak with passion, as they know what they're talking about. Looking at Aline this morning, I was confident that she knew what she was talking about. She was confident about it. And it was pleasant to see that kind of confidence in the eyes of African young leaders, the leaders of tomorrow, who really believe in themselves. Our generation has to put some framework, and we believe that one of our contributions is the Smart Africa Manifesto.
Dr. Tura, thank you very much indeed. And I certainly agree with you. I mean, whenever I'm in the room with young people, the energy is actually quite inspiring and uplifting. So let's turn to the younger members of this panel. I'm going to start with you, Aline, because you sit in that unique space where you're private-facing and public-facing at the same time. The President just now spoke about this is really about transforming people's lives. At the end of the day, you know, if the lowest citizen's life is improved, then we're doing our job. And I'm just wondering, you know, what can platforms like Rwanda Online do to help really change and leverage the positive things in our economy so that we can move forward?
Thank you, Peter. You have to excuse me, I'm getting a bit of a cold, so I may not be very clear. Let me first give some background on what Rwanda Online is seeking to do, and then I'll be able to answer your question better. So Rwanda Online shall be a platform that will host all government services. So essentially what we're trying to do is something that has not been done in the emerging world, the emerging economies, which is taking all government services and putting them online. By digitizing services, what we're doing is not only improving the experience for the citizens and businesses at the front end, but we are also streamlining how business is done at the back end within the government, because that means that you're creating a uniform way of working, first of all. And then when you have these government institutions generating all this data, you're able to build this, I will call it data or knowledge real estate, that they can use to inform their policies, to build better programs for the citizens. So when you look at it in that holistic way, in so many ways, we are revolutionizing how service delivery is done in Africa. Now, you were wondering how, you know, with that sort of public and private picture, can you restate your question?
Right, okay, so you've got a Rwanda Online,
Yeah.
and I'm just wondering, because what you're doing is basically digitizing service, isn't it?
Okay.
How does that translate into transforming people's lives and
Okay.
helping our economy?
Okay, with that background, so by digitizing services, we are, when I think of it, there's three key areas that we are changing people's lives. we are having an impact on the economy. So when you digitize, I like the theme for this Smart Rwanda Days, digitizing Rwanda. I will add another statistic. So I believe a 10% increase of broadband access is about 0.2% growth, GDP growth per capita. Digitization, a 10% increase in digitization is actually a 0.5%, at least for an emerging economy. When you go to more advanced economies, it's actually a bit bigger. Now, just with that thinking, we have laid all this infrastructure. We have given people more access, not only to broadband and to the tools, to the terminal equipment. How do we then leverage that to improve their lives? One, if you're improving the economy, if there's GDP growth, there's also job creation. There's a lot of jobs that are going to be formed around this change. The other thing is you're improving the quality of life. Because when people stop having to spend time lining up, they can spend their time doing better, more productive things at work. And in terms of governance, for people like, I'm happy to see Professor Shaka here. When you digitize these services, what we are seeing is more productivity for the government, which comes with reduced costs. It means that we're going to drive down the costs of service delivery. It is also more efficiency and transparency. The transparency is good for the citizen because it drives down the cost of that service. If you usually had to, pass out a few dollars, you don't have to do that anymore. So it's a holistic, when I think about Rwanda Online, it's really a holistic picture. It's going to improve the government, and by improving the government, us as the citizens are going to be given an opportunity to do so much more. And with the number of jobs that will be created around this, we are really we are setting the tone for innovation, because by innovating in government, we are also allowing people to contribute to it. So one of the things that we're doing at Rwanda Online, please stop me when I get excited and then I can go on forever. One of the things we're doing at Rwanda Online is we're not going to develop all the services, and maybe for the developers here, this should be good news. We have set out a number of services that we will develop to create traction for the platform. After which we shall open the doors for third-party developers to work with government institutions and develop their services and integrate to the platform. So by innovating in the government, we are also creating room for innovation. And I think that's really key for digitizing the Rwandan economy.
All right. Well, I've got to say that, I come from an age and an era where we used to queue up for everything. So if you can just reduce the queues and get rid of them, then for me, my life is great. So thank you very much indeed for giving us an idea of this interface between the public and the private sector, and how citizens will be able to really unlock some benefits from the digitization of services. Okay, let's chat to Jean now, who's the founder, as I said, and CEO of Talk Limited. So he's an entrepreneur. He's busy getting on with it. And I guess in many ways, Jean, you're a shining example of what happens when young talent is developed and nurtured. I know that you went through an incubator process as well. And I'm just wondering, what needs to happen next for young people like you to explode, to really get onto that next level? I mean, I'm really hoping that one day that the next Alibaba comes from Kigali, maybe.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very delighted to be here this afternoon and actually to be in the presence of such a big audience. In my own example, I've passed through a very good program, which was the K-Lab. And this allowed me, or taught me, to really stay small, but impact really big time. what is next for me, for my company, is to really branch out of the country, go to other countries such as Africa, and allow this a small startup that started in a country such as Rwanda to impact international communities. I truly believe that Rwanda has talent, and Rwanda has a lot of young people who have more than the required time to think, try new things. If they fail, Rwanda really is a good place where it's okay to fail and try again. So, but for us and my small startup, what we've been challenged a lot was to really say we sustained everything in Rwanda. The software system we created has enough security and ready to scale to embrace international community, say, culture and internationalizing the whole system. We've been working on that for the last 5 months, and we tried this in ways that I couldn't believe when they happened. So one of the key enablers for us to actually have a feel that we could go across Africa was the fact that we got support from a very big company in Rwanda called Bralirwa, and this company started talking about the system that we created in Rwanda in other networks and partners that they have across Africa. I believe that this is going to enable us to really reduce the cost of rolling out in these countries, but I cannot remove the fact that the only thing and the biggest reason that this happened was that we managed to start very soon. We were allowed to play in a very enabling environment while we were still very small. And again, today I'm going to add again that we are becoming very smart in a way that we are running this business. Okay. This is an example that an inspiration that I can give to all the young people, that it is possible to really be small and start very soon and try and fail again and try, because you have all the time in the world to try that, to do that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. And we're definitely inspired by your ambitions. And I like the word, instead of saying failure, perhaps it's just saying it gives us an opportunity to find another way. So continue on that path, and this journey across the continent, I think, is also powerful. And I'm going to be asking our leaders a little bit later on, I'm putting them on notice, how can they make it easier for you to do that? And I heard a few solutions earlier on, cutting rates of roaming and that kind of thing. So we'll get a little bit more detail on that from some of the ministers that are here with us. But we're going to make sure that our leaders create further enabling environment for you to be able to cross borders and do what you do. Okay, so that's kind of how the system works. It produces these young people, these entrepreneurs, and then they go blaze a trail. But it has to start somewhere, doesn't it? And it starts at school. It starts in our primary schools, in our high schools, and in our tertiary institutions. And one project that's been working very well in Rwanda is the One Laptop Per Child program. And this is a key project that aims at the enhancement of education through the introduction of technology in primary schools. And there's a number of children, I think it's class 4 to 6, they have an opportunity to get this laptop, and they start working straight away, literally, on programming. And it's great to know. We've got a young lady here who's 11 years old, and she's a programmer. And, and I know that she's working on a program that helps people decide on what a balanced diet is. And then you can see from me that I need to get to hold of that program straight away. So let's hear from Ketia Ikirezi, who's age 11. Ketia, if you could stand up so that we can see you. I know that Ketia has an important question that she'd like to ask the President. Ketia, what's your question? All right, you better pay attention because here's the future Minister of ICTs here. Okay, you can speak, ask the question to the President.
I will say my question in Kinyarwanda.
Okay.
Nitwa Ikirezi Ketia, mfite imyaka 11, niga mu mwaka wa gatandatu ku kigo cya Parc Don Bosco. Nagize amahirwe yo gukoresha mudasobwa kuva mu mwaka wa 4 kugeza ngeze mu mwaka wa gatandatu. Urwego ngezeho ubu ngubu ndi umuprograma ku buryo nshobora gukoresha mudasobwa yanjye nkayitegeka igakora ikintu nshaka. Muri iyo mudasobwa yanjye mfitemo ama projects menshi, uwaza gushaka ko mwereka aze kuza ndamwereka. Ikibazo cyanjye ni iki: ese ko hari abanyeshuri bagenzi banjye biga mu gatandatu turi kwitegura kuzajya mu mashuri yisumbuye, ese aho tuzajya kwiga tuzazihasanga? Ese tuzakomeza gukora ibintu dukunda? Ese tuzakomeza dukoresha mudasobwa twari tumenyereye? Nicyo kibazo nari mfite. Murakoze.
Okay, so those that were laughing obviously speak in Rwanda fluently. And for the rest of us, essentially what she was saying is that she's really enjoying being a programmer. She's having great fun with that. And one of the great things about these computers is that she loves telling it what to do, and then it does what she wants it to do. But she says that her journey at school, at primary school at the moment, is a good one. She's enjoying learning so many things. But what happens next, Mr. President? Where's her computer going to be when she gets to high school?
Everybody in this room is getting very smart. Peter can understand Kinyarwanda in just a few hours he has been here. So. But to the young girl, I wish to say that definitely what you have at your level now, as you grow and as you go to other levels of your studies, you'll find better facilities. I'm sure as you understand more and more what you are doing, you'll even find more complicated not only applications but devices and platforms to build on. So as the young person knows here, we say better things are ahead of us. Every day, yes, here every day brings better things. So even to the young person, better days ahead are assured.
Fantastic. Okay, so your future is secure. But can I just encourage you, because they're confident, aren't they? No fear. These young kids, they just take over. Just keep knocking on the door. The minister is here, and if there's things that you need, just go knock on his door and say, I need to move on. And I'm sure they'll create an environment for you.
Soon replacing him.
Yes. All right, okay. I'm going to start getting your questions shortly, but there's one person I would like to have a conversation with now. So we've got these young children who are getting these laptops and learning the business of programming and getting into ICT and learning that language. And you will have heard the name K-Lab and Think. These are incubators that are doing great things in nurturing the likes of Jean here to move a step forward. And I guess if we're going to need to grow exponentially and really take that next step, maybe there's more that the private sector can do. And one company that's really sort of stepped into that space is Tigo Rwanda through the Think Incubator. And I'd like to ask Tongai Maramba to just stand up and just tell us a little bit about the intervention your company is making. Because I think maybe this could serve as an example of what private sector can do to help in this journey.
Thank you, Peter. Your Excellency, Mr. President, and the other distinguished guests. Thanks for the question. I think it's very relevant, and it's a question that we've been asking ourselves for a while. The reason maybe for us is perhaps coming from a different angle. You know, for us, especially in the industry that we're in, innovation is very much an imperative if we're to survive in the long term. So we're always looking for ways to be able to drive that innovation. We see the answer to this question really, we see the answer to this question really in two parts. The first part is incubation and acceleration. So you mentioned Think. What we see is that we need to incubate and accelerate the best business ideas and the best business models in the world. We need to do it here in Kigali, and we need to develop them for Africa. We need to make sure that we build these businesses into successful and scalable, not only here in Rwanda, but across the continent. And to do that, you know, of course, we give cash, so we make investments in these businesses. But more importantly, we also give them access to some of the greatest minds in the digital space, in terms of mentorship and training. And we open up all the networks that we as Tigo have, both here in Rwanda, across Africa, globally, as Millicom, and with our sister companies, really to give the best chance possible for any of these businesses that come into the incubator. So we set up Think. We started running a process in the summer for applications. We had 150 applications. 46% were from Rwanda. So that means that there are 46% of those applicants are here. Those are business ideas that are developed here in the digital space, which are looking for support and for development. But I think what's also important is that we had more than half of them coming from outside of Rwanda. And that's also very important. We had 20 countries represented in that set of applications, of which 6 were non-African countries. And the reason why that is important is because what we need to do is we need to build Kigali, Rwanda, into a center for innovation. That means the ideas that are homegrown, but it means the ideas that come from overseas as well. And that's really what we're trying to do in how we're developing Think. So we've had 150 applications. We're now down to a short list of 10, and from those we'll select 5. Your panelist here, Jean, is actually one of the final 10. So he's a very strong candidate. Good luck, Jean. They'll be inducted into a 6-month program where we do all of this development and training, and really try to build these businesses. And we see this as a marriage between us and those businesses. It's not just about the training, it's about how we develop them afterwards, how we introduce them to investors afterwards, how we turn that business really into something scalable. So I can see you reaching for your mic. The first part I would say is incubation and acceleration, and that's something that we put on ourselves. The second part is something that I would put more on the community. And I think, you know, this was summed up very nicely when I presented this concept of Think to the Minister of Youth and ICT. And he said what he would love to see in Kigali is a constellation of innovation centers. And I think that's the right word, is we really need to have an ecosystem of innovation in order for these businesses to be successful. So companies like Jean are coming from K-Lab, they're coming to Think, they should have somewhere else to go, other sources of support and resource. So that's a challenge for the community and for the panelists to see how we can really grow that ecosystem in Rwanda. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much indeed. And I think your interventions can only be lauded. And as you said, I think it's about accelerating this process so that we can see this action on the ground for the continent and from the continent out to the rest of the world. You've talked about Jean quite a bit. I want to ask you, Jean, this next question. These incubators are working great. They are functional and the acceleration incubators. I love the language. I'm just wondering for you, and there are lots and lots of young people, they can't all get to the incubators. Is there, in your view, another kind of intervention maybe that might help us get more and more young people into the game much quicker? What else can we do for you, in other words?
Thank you very much, and I'm very delighted that Mr. Tongai mentioned my company being among the finalists, and I'm very excited about it. So for me and my company, we believe that we don't have room for shortcut and getting where we really want to go very fast. We think there is a process, and we are very lucky that we were born in this era where our country even is activating all that to happen. Thank you. So for me, what I'm really thinking is the key to enabling entrepreneurs to really flourish is to open doors for them. It's not just about the money that the investors are going to put in your company. It's not about all the time they are going to give to you. It's the right opportunity that people who got there before you can afford to give to you. And of course, I can promise that all the young people that I see who are coming after me, or whom we are together in this journey, they are all ready to seize the right opportunities that can be given to them. So I'm very confident and thinking that it's very important that these doors, if these doors, the right doors are open for us, the entrepreneurs, we can really grow very fast.
Okay. All right, you want to add to that, don't you? Thank you very much indeed, Jean. Yeah?
Yeah, I just want to add to what Jean was saying by, yesterday we were talking about an issue of perception where a lot of Rwandan companies don't think that Rwandan developers can solve their problems, can develop the right applications for them. And I think this really needs to change because we are outsourcing from so many corners of the world, yet we should be developing our talent here. They have the talent, they just need the room to be able to do. Yeah,
okay, so essentially, you've got to go beyond just teaching them. Once they graduate from these incubators, give them a chance. There's a lot of big organizations, a lot of private sector organizations here. Give them a chance, open the doors. They may actually just surprise you and outperform these international organizations that you're paying top dollar for. Talking about international organizations, there's a gentleman that's with us here, Sunir Chandari, who's a businessman from Canada, and he works with Lepage 2000, which is a division of Conros. Sunir, if you could just stand up and get a microphone, because I want to ask you about the kind of conversation that we should be having if we are going to explode, if we are going to get to this next level. We need to change the way that we look at our global counterparts and the conversations that we're having outside our countries. Whenever I go online, I always find that we are busy buying stuff from abroad, and the PayPal system is working to us send dollars there. What kind of things do we need to do to compete on the international platform, conversations that we need to have with partners and the international business community so that they can look at us and say, you know what, I need to go to Rwanda for this?
That's a great question. Thank you, Peter. Your Excellency and all of our distinguished guests here, thank you for allowing me to speak as an investor, international investor, and offer a perspective about how we would evaluate opportunity here. And let me start, first of all, by acknowledging the great efforts that have been successfully invested in creating strong and attractive conditions for business here in Rwanda. And that, of course, is one of the first things that we would look at as an international community. And then when it comes to ICT, the government took great leadership thus far in creating real impact in ICT with initiatives like e-government initiatives such as Rwanda Online. However, as you note, Peter, I think we now need to reach out and seek stronger private sector partnerships, some of which certainly would be wise or of benefit to be international in nature. And the challenge, I guess, for me as an investor, and I'm going to throw a question back to the panel here, is we look at Rwanda, and one challenge is Rwanda is a small community in terms of market size, and it also is surrounded by some powerful neighbors who also have their very cogent ICT strategies of their own. So one might ground a potential strategy, a potential investment in Rwanda on the basis that it can be ideated and piloted successfully with a government that has got a very strong track record. However, when we go beyond that, there are a couple of questions that arise, one of which relates to the capacity to continue to invest in infrastructure to support, sustainably support the ICT sector's growth. Power, broadband, international broadband connections, etc. And furthermore, as we look at the EAC, which is a construct which has within itself its own corridors of alliance, I ask, how can the international community look to Rwanda and see it as a way to springboard into opportunity in the region based on some of the dynamics that exist here?
Okay, all right. So, Mr. President, I'm going to ask you that question, and I'd also like to prepare the Honourable Mr. Fred Matiang'i to speak as well, because I know that between you, you've got this Northern Corridors project and collaboration. Do you want to speak to the Canadian business investor? He wants to get into Africa. How can he leverage what's happening in Rwanda through to the region?
First of all, I think one of the worries the investor has is to a large extent addressed. The size of the market. The size of the market is addressed through integration. And I think the East African region, 5 countries, 100 and close to 40 million people in size, is already addressing that, or on the way of addressing that. So size is not a big problem. Second, I think investing properly is important. If you invest correctly, and that is, if we encourage innovations and create the environment for that. Fortunately, what we are talking about, the digital innovation, has leveled the ground. Anybody from any size of a country or population can compete. So once you've competed and out of innovations comes an idea, it no longer matters, it can cross borders very easily. This is not, ideas cannot be landlocked. Innovations are not landlocked. So if we invested with somebody through innovations that come up, like those that have been mentioned by the young people, there are others doing something else somewhere else. That doesn't matter. But if you have invested in a good innovation or idea, then there are no boundaries. So it's really not a problem. So for us, as Rwanda, whether public or private sector, we work together and make sure that this environment is that which allows people to innovate. It allows entrepreneurship, and it can be rolled out to any extent, geographical extent. It doesn't matter anymore, depending on the quality of those innovations and what particular problems they are targeted to address. And I think we all understand that innovations are about problem solving. And problem solving is a process that involves and entails business. People can make money out of these processes. So I think, again, it depends on how smart we continue to be in what we are doing.
Okay, all right, so it's not a problem. Great ideas are not landlocked, which is good to hear. But I want to turn to you, Cabinet Secretary Matiang'i from Kenya. We've got a young man here who wants to build his business across borders, and we've got investors that want to come in and they want to work regionally. So maybe the question now becomes, what sort of interventions, what sort of leadership have you put into place to make it easier? Can we get the microphone to come to the front here? What sort of interventions have you put into place? I heard a few of them earlier on. I'd just love to hear your thoughts, particularly when we talk about the context of the northern corridors, to make this happen. In fact, I'm just going to take charge of the situation and give you the microphone.
Thank you, Peter, Your Excellency, President Kagame, and colleagues on the panel. Under the Northern Corridor Infrastructure Integration Framework, we've been working together. We're part of the East African community, but we've been working together with the Republic of Southern Sudan, Uganda, Rwanda, and Kenya. Our focus really is to take full advantage, if I may draw directly from the question that Sunil asked, taking full advantage of the opportunities available in the region. That you have a huge population in the region, and trying to remove the barriers to successful investment and movement within the region. And one critical barrier is in infrastructure. And we've been working to remove all the barriers within the infrastructural framework that makes it difficult for us to do business and to integrate effectively as one region. And that is why, under the Northern Corridor Infrastructure Integration Framework, ICT is a key cluster, and we've been working together on a number of initiatives, all of them intended, to create a facilitative ecosystem for the thriving of innovation and the growth of business. We have just successfully negotiated and completed a framework of reducing the cost of calls across our countries. And now, today we just signed a final implementation communique between the ministers of Uganda, Rwanda, and Kenya, because under that framework, South Sudan will join us in December, which will see the full implementation of the One Network area as directed by the Heads of State Summit here in Kigali 2 months ago. What that does is that it reduces the cost of calls, in-country calls across the 4 countries by over 60%, and therefore makes it easier for citizens of these countries within the Northern Corridor to interact very easily. We have worked on other broader ways of integrating our infrastructural programs. For example, ICT has become key to all the infrastructural programs that we are doing here, whether it's the standard gauge railway, the power transmission lines, the road network that you're building in the region. And again, as directed by the Heads of State Summit, we're integrating fiber, for example, across all these frameworks so that ICT becomes and remains key to this. All the other activities that have happened under the Northern Corridor integration framework have been very successful because they have deployed ICTs. For example, we are moving to the era of machine-read ID cards, and we're using machine-read ID cards to move around within our countries, which makes it much easier and brings closer to us the dream of living as one environment and one ecosystem. So to young innovators who are here, we have, using ICT, pulled down the borders and pull down all the encumbrances, and we will pull down many more others so that integration becomes a reality. We become one market, we become one business environment, and we are accelerating faster to greater interaction because we are thinking about connected Northern Corridor, connected East Africa, so that we can find opportunities to share the innovations, the policies, and the frameworks of developing ICT, so that the digital economies we are developing within the region can really thrive and grow within this particular region. And you're looking at a huge population of people within this particular region. So for all our innovators, I would again quote President Kagame, the better days lie ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Cabinet Secretary. I'm going to ask that the microphone comes to the Minister from South Sudan. But before that, Dr. Toure, I want to ask you, you sit at the ITU, so you've got a global picture of what's going on and the progress that is being made right around the planet. And I'm just wondering, what are some of the things that we can learn from other parts of the world that are being done right? And maybe, what are the things that we are doing well that maybe we really need to sort of leverage so that we can compete on a global space?
This is a very good question. In fact, one of the first things that I've learned in the international community that we Africans can learn, one of our biggest weaknesses was the fact that Africans were not sharing information. Information in the African culture was only good when it's secret. It's true. The local healers will have a secret ingredient that they will go and harvest in secret and say some magic words in it, while it's the time they cut the root or the leaves that is important. And they put it in powder and don't share it. They might share it with someone before they die, but since I don't know when they die, 80% of the knowledge was disappearing. No, it's true, and we are in the information society. And information is the only thing that when you share it, it grows. Anything else, when you share it, is divided, but information is increasing. Now, that's one first lesson, I think, that, and we are now, this generation has that behind them, and they are sharing information, which is a good thing. Therefore, I see key to success. The second lesson I would say is what Jean mentioned here, failure. In some cultures, failure is not acceptable. And in some other cultures, the cultures that succeeded are rewarding failure. Success comes after many failures. And it's even sweeter, actually, after you fail many times. The third lesson that I would say is fear, risk-taking. And because of the failure, risk of failure, people were not taking risks. And this younger generation is no longer afraid of that. And I always say that the only thing they should be afraid of is fear itself. Another thing that I would think of is taking the opportunities. You see some successful people, they're not been, it's simply not by luck. I will quote Wangari, the former, the Nobel Prize winner from Kenya, who used to say that there's no such thing as luck. It's when opportunity meets preparedness. And the younger generation is prepared today. And in this information society, things like software development, you know, our young farmers, young people in the bush, are developing softwares on a daily basis, subconsciously. What is a software? It's a survival kit. It's a solution to a recurring problem. And they are doing that in the subconscious just to survive on a daily basis. And therefore, I have a very strong belief in this generation and that the opportunities that they are getting are second to none. So therefore, even the sky is no longer the limit.
Wow, okay, very inspiring. Thank you very much indeed, sir. Minister Rebecca Joshua Okwachi from South Sudan, I'd just like to ask you a question because we're talking about the future, we're talking about creating and unlocking this huge potential, and I'm just wondering, We've seen a great example in Rwanda rebuilding a country. Your country has come out of conflict. Your country is developing. What in your map going forward is ICT? What role is it playing in a more than just an emerging economy, but one that's literally starting from scratch going forward?
Thank you very much, moderator. Your Excellency, President Kagame, I'm so honored to be speaking in front of you. You are my role model, and I'm very proud of you. And we are so happy that you are leading us in Africa. Other panelists, and also our big brother from ITU, Mr. Toure, thank you very much for your leadership. I'm so glad that we are participating in this particular Smart Rwanda Days. And for us, this is one of our leading examples of how we move forward. Yes, South Sudan is a country that has gone through very difficult times, long decades of war, but we are picking up the crumbs and we are already moving forward. We've also gone through a lot of challenges. But then, it's always good to have big brothers and big sisters who work with you during difficult times. ICT for us, we consider it as something new to the nation, because all this time that we wasted fighting, although at some point it was for good cause, and that's why we got our independence, but then ICT is emerging. It's new. Not only that, when we were one country, we didn't have even a Ministry of Telecommunications or an ICT. We were all under one country, and when the division came, then we started. The ministry is new. But I would like to say that we have picked up and we have moved. Today, as I talk, although I'm barely 1 year in the ministry. I took over in August 2013. So by August, only 1 year. But I would share very quickly the wonders that have happened. By this time, as I talk today here, 2 weeks ago, we had established our regulatory body, the South Sudan Telecommunications Authority. We never had it. It's new, but it didn't come. It didn't come by miracles. It's these brothers that I have here. I'm happy that I'm the only sister among them, but they have always been very good brothers. We talked 3 months down the line when we met in one of the big conferences, and they asked me, my sister, you say you are new, the country is new, what can we do for you? And I said, look, I've been advised that I need to set up a regulator because it will help me to look at issues of licensing, reviewing the license, working on the frequencies and all these jargons that I did not even know about. But then they said, yes, we have to help her because she said she wants to be helped. So that will is there. And we moved very fast. Today we are talking about a regulatory body that has been established. It's because of that brotherhood and working together. I also came and found a resolution from the cabinet establishing a national operator. And today we have a big ministerial committee that's working on the national operator. And by next time we meet, you will hear what's happening about the national operator. And there it goes. My colleague from Kenya had talked about the Northern Corridor. That's also an area that we feel we will never remain behind. We move very quickly, and I think the example he's just given is that we are talking about the one network area. Who will dream that within a very short period of time from 2013 until today, we are talking about one network area. It's again, we work together. Very soon, as they said, they are going to launch the 3 countries, and in December, South Sudan must be there. So for us already, we are even working on that one network area. And also the issue of the broadband. Now, by offer from the colleagues again, they told me, we have strategies in place. They are already there. So why do we have to reinvent the wheel? We don't have to. And we went on borrowing from here and there, studied them, customizing to our country. And today, very soon, we are going to have our broadband strategy. that will also enable us to move very quickly apart from the fiber optic cables. We are talking about sharing facilities. We already have ideas how to move from Juba to Lokchokio to Mombasa, from Juba through Uganda, and from Juba through Khartoum, and from Juba to Djibouti. So we can also share the facilities that are there. Maybe what I would want to say is that there is a very good opportunity in working together and not closing up. There are no secrets anymore, Dr. Toure. I think it's time now. There is time now to share all this knowledge available here for South Sudan for us to move very quickly. Today is a smart Rwanda. Tomorrow is smart South Sudan and smart all these countries that are there. And that boiled down to smart Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, what I'm going to do now, because we've run out of time, is I'm going to ask our panelists to sum up. But as they share their final thoughts, I do want them to take at least 2 questions that they can bring on board in their conclusion. So hands up, please. 2 people are going to get a lucky draw. Young man in the front there, and I need a woman at the back there. So if you could both stand up, we'll get a microphone to you. So ask your questions very briefly, and I'm going to ask our panelists to take cognizance of those questions and also share your final thoughts as we say goodbye. All right, let's start with you. Just say who you are.
I'll let the lady go first.
Oh, okay. Well, we're a very nice young man. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Jocelyn Akamariza, and I'm a student at Bridge to Rwanda. And my question is, sometimes we come across services or devices, and they are sophisticated that we don't enjoy to use them. So I would like to ask our young pioneers, how did you make simple your innovations so that the last consumers get access to them? Thank you.
Okay, all right. So some of the apps are too clever. All right, okay. You are?
Yes, Your Excellency, Secretary General of ITU, my colleagues on the panel, and all distinguished guests.
If you could just identify yourself.
I'm Patrick Buchana.
Okay.
I'm CEO of AFNOB. And first of all, I would really like to thank the ministry for setting up and the government for all this ICT infrastructure. And please allow me just comment before I ask my question.
Very briefly.
Sure. I think you all noticed that here in Rwanda, we've set ourselves in a position that we're not only innovating for us, but we're innovating for the rest of Africa. Because whether we like it or not, everyone is looking at Rwanda. So in that context, I would like to bring our debate to what does it mean to be a true entrepreneur who is going to innovate, because it's no longer about just making money and having a big company. It's about setting yourself in a position that whatever you're doing, everyone else is looking up to you and getting all the good examples, discipline, collaboration, and all these other things. So allow me to ask Your Excellency, Paul Kagame, what does it mean to be a true entrepreneur that the rest of Africa can look up to us?
All right, okay. And then one last question. There's a lady there with a red top there. I know you're desperate to ask a question. You'll be the very last person that gets to ask a question.
Thank you, Peter. My name is Esther Kunda, and we've seen and heard about all these exciting innovation happening. And one of the things is we're going to be leveraging fiber optic and 4G LTE to get to our consumers. But it is still, these technologies are still very expensive to get to the consumer's home. So my question is, what are the key steps or conversations that are happening both here in Rwanda and across Africa to make sure that to get this technology to the consumer's home and that it's very affordable for them? So I think and of course I want to know who are the main key players, what is the private sector thinking about it, and the partners in terms of all these technologies getting to the consumers. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. 2 young ladies and 1 young man. So some powerful questions there, and I'm going to ask you all to start sort of giving us your final thoughts. We started with the president. We're going to end with the president. So I'm going to start with the young people first. And just bear in mind, so you don't all have to answer the question, the ones that you think that you can address, except the one that was specifically for the president. We've been asked, perhaps, you know, these apps are too clever sometimes, and maybe we're dealing with people that challenged literacy and so on and so forth. How do we make it accessible? Not just affordable, but accessible in terms of simple to use, easy to use, that kind of thing. Let me start with you, Ali.
Thank you, Peter. And these are the closing remarks as well?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for your question. I think in the context of Rwanda Online, that question is very relevant, because if we're going to take all government services digital and expect the entire population to be able to access them, then there has to be, you know, it has to be a very easy experience for the user. So in Rwanda, there's so many levels of users, and I'm not going to delve into that, but usually the question that people have are, how will we support the citizen, the Muturaje, the villager down in the most remote part of the country who may not even be literate, let alone digitally literate. And the way we're looking at it is, one, having a very easy user experience really just on the platform, on the portal itself. But in addition to that, we are also, it would not add value to Rwanda if it was simply a technology experience. So we are also thinking in the big picture, how can we drive adoption and usage? And one of the solutions to that is to have really a push, not only from the government, but also from the private sector. Having people who will be on ground to help these citizens, to support them as they use the portal. So the question of how we make that innovation accessible and simple is it's a bit nuanced for me, but I think when I think of that question, I think of that person at the very bottom. My closing remarks would really be maybe a challenge to the policymakers, because actually before I talk about that, the President, His Excellency, actually corrected me. So a 10% increase in digitization not only increases the GDP per capita growth by 0.5%, it's actually 1.2%. And so it's actually bigger than I had anticipated. But the challenge to the policymakers would be, you know, when you look at digitization in different parts of the world, there's always subtle differences in the impact of that digitization. And it's really up to us to be really tuned in to how we can maximize adoption and utilization and the impact of these innovations, of these digital innovations. And for me particularly, I'm really interested in how we maximize the use of Rwanda Online, because Rwanda Online really has the potential to change how Rwanda operates. I mean, I can't stress it enough. Right. And so if we are going to have a digital market, my challenge to them is to really keep tuned in and use this information to inform policies that are really appropriate to Rwanda, given the story that we are going to see unfold over the next few years.
Okay, well, I hope the policymakers are listening to you. Young man, Sean, right, so your final thoughts. What would you want to share with us?
Thank you very much. First, I would like to address the question that Jocelyn asked. How did we manage to create an application, a software system that is relevant to the people of Rwanda? Well, first, I would like to mention that my company owns only one software application. So over the last almost 4 years that I've been trying to write software, I was working only on one software system. Now, the idea was first to really see the problem that was happening. I had a chance to meet a friend of mine who is running a distribution channel business 2 hours from Kigali. And this person, although they went to school, they understand everything that has to do with the system, but the people they use back there don't know anything except counting the money and making sure they don't lose their boss's money. So we needed to create a software system that could run their business 2 hours from Kigali, what they can access this, their business information while they are seated here, but again, make sure this person at the other end can also use the system accurately. So we needed to sit with the people and understand exactly their challenges. In the process of understanding what they do, we created proper workflows for these people. If you tell me you are a cashier, there is what you do when you get to work. There is what you do next. It's something that you repeat every day. So we created something that this person look and say, this is designed for me. Yeah. Then we also gave the correct interface to that person who need only to log into this system to see report. So they don't need to understand what their cashier do as long as they can get their correct report and compare the money that has been deposited to the bank.
So the process is to really get to the nitty-gritty of what is the person doing and creating a solution for that person in particular.
Exactly.
In 30 seconds, your absolute final thought.
My final thought is I would like to inspire other young innovators coming after me. It's not really about running very fast to get there and show everyone that you've made it. Entrepreneurship and innovations like running a marathon. I said this before and I need to emphasize again. It's 40 kilometers ahead. If you start running very fast, you get very tired very quickly. So you need to take your time. You need to understand that there are times that it becomes really difficult before you get there. So if you keep going, you finish the marathon.
And
Thank
drink
you so
lots
much.
of water along the way. Jean Twagira, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to turn to you, Dr. Toure. We're laying all these cables on the east and the west and the south of the continent, and they're fantastic. However, how do we make them affordable to get into our homes? And also, in answering that, if you could also share your final thoughts.
Thank you very much. And that was exactly the question of the young lady who spoke last. And I wanted to address that question, actually. Affordability is a key issue. And through the programs that are underway that you've seen over the past 2 days, leading to one network, you've seen this morning during the presentation of the Smart Africa Initiative, Africa shown with 54 countries, and then shown in the next slide with 5 regional blocks, and then in the next slide, only 1 continent. And that's the kind of thing that will enable us to really have economies of scales and bring down the cost. But it's important to note that in order to do all this, we need to make sure that we are here in Africa creating our own information. Creating of content will be key for success, because information is a commodity today. And when you create information, you can get wealth out of it. So we're no longer talking about poverty alleviation, as some people used to say back in when we were doing the Millennium Development Goals. And poverty alleviation, which is an expression that I found very, in fact, insulting. How can you alleviate my poverty? You know, I mean, a poverty alleviated is still a poverty. Yeah, we're talking about wealth creation now, and that's what and that's the potential that we're giving here. Every citizen of this planet has the potential to create information. We are all a potential source of information, and therefore, in order for us to enter the knowledge society that we are dreaming of, one has to access information, use information, create information, and share information. Those are the prerequisites. The societies that are dominating the internet world today, as the ones creating information, why it is expensive for us to access? Because we are going and shopping in their place. Why can they shop here too? And you know, most of 80% of the shopping you make are local shoppers. And therefore, 80% of the information that will be created here locally will be consumed here, and therefore it will be much cheaper for us. And therefore, that's a very key important. But my final thoughts are the fact that I see all the ingredients coming together for a chain reaction. The legal and regulatory framework is coming together with a clever vision from the leaders. We have the infrastructure that is being built by private sector. They will make profit out of it, and there's nothing wrong with it. They will create jobs and new services, new applications. The younger generation is being educated. Capacity building is key for success. It's a continuous challenge to continue to build capacity. And last but not least, the regional integrations are key for developing contents, and that's what we are seeing today. So in 87 days, I will be leaving my job as ITU Secretary General. And let me tell you, I'm a happy man with what I'm seeing and with the perspective that I see for the future.
Dr. Toure, thank you very much indeed. And if I could give the last word to you, Your Excellency, the question that's been posed to you is, what do you see as the real entrepreneur in this age that we're living in? And then maybe just your final thoughts as we look forward in this digital environment.
The entrepreneur is the one who does not alleviate poverty but creates wealth. I think I agree entirely with the Secretary General of ITU. Some of these languages are not very good. Alleviating poverty is like treating a patient and he doesn't get critical but stays sick and doesn't die and keeps on like that. So I think we need to do things differently, and we have had conversations with some of our partners who keep using not only this language but also practices. But so I think we are talking about a different thing then. Now, but let me talk to the three issues raised. I'll try maybe be brief. On the first one, which I think all of them have been explained well, but let me say a few things. On the first one of, broadband and all this, I think this is what we are talking about. Being affordable actually should be seen in two ways. One which answers the first question. Affordability is not just something that you can go and buy. You go and buy because you need it, because you also understand it. So affordability is not just an issue of price. It should also be an issue of whether you understand what you are buying, the use of it, and how it is going to be used. So if you will, in the first, on the side of affordability and this infrastructure, being laid out and how it works for people, let me say again this. We have had a conversation even here in Rwanda. We have had it during our Broadband Commission meetings. I think we should treat broadband like a utility that we should avail and make affordable to as many people as we can. For example, to the extent that if we are constructing a house like this one, you put there pipes of water, and you put cables for electricity and so on and so forth. We were suggesting put there the pipe for broadband as part of something, this house must be connected and therefore people therein. It's having in mind how this will work for people. If not now, eventually, day after tomorrow, and so on and so forth. So I think as we invest in those kinds of infrastructure here, we are thinking about that, and that's how government has invested. We have encouraged the private sector to invest with the government, and we are looking for ways in which to reduce the costs, but also increase the benefits in terms of affordability, and also being affordable on a wide scale means people investing in that actually get their returns. So that is on the other part. Then there's another, which was the second question. I think in all humility, the question is not so much what Africa will learn from Rwanda, or that Rwanda is. I don't personally like the whole idea. It's not to be seen that way. I think we look at it in the way of Rwanda being a key player among others, and therefore we are sharing and working together and benefiting together and moving forward together is most important. So to speak, we may think, we may act Rwandan, but we should think African and beyond. So we think we are not just acting here in our thinking, we are crossing borders and benefiting others as well as we benefit from others. So the idea of working together, I think, is the most important. And of course, the other first question also was ably answered. It's important. It's like we do politics generally on issues of policy. We always have a conversation among ourselves here in Rwanda, the leaders. Even when you have a complete grasp of what the policy is, what the ideas are, you just don't go to the people and speak in any language you want, or complicate things because you are sophisticated. And no, you remember you're talking to people. Therefore, it only becomes useful if you are talking to people in the language they understand. That's how. So you must soften. You must make easy, that communication of ideas to people. Otherwise, it wouldn't serve any purpose. So in the same way, the devices, the applications, the technologies behind this, I think they always have the intention of saying, how is the consumer going to relate to this? Will they have quick grasp of issues and therefore relate to, apart from liking it for any other reason, they must like it for making their life easy in terms of application, because they understand, because of the way the consumer receives the idea, the message, and that connects the person to what is there to be used is very crucial. It's very important, and I think this works well for the innovators. Must be working well for the consumers. So finally, I think we're making good progress in Africa, in Rwanda. But the final thought and message to our brothers and sisters here in the audience and in Africa, we should not take things for granted. I think we should remain working hard at all these things. And I know there is a famous saying that this is Africa's century. Well, that sounds very good. But why was the last one not Africa's? So, and if we make the same mistakes of the past, then we will miss this one as well. And so for me, I believe it has always been Africa's day. So it's up to the Africans to seize the opportunity and the moment and make our wishes and our aspirations a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I just say, Murakoze Nyakubawa Perezida. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. President. Okay.
Before we conclude,
yes.
let me, if I may, use my privilege here. I most sincerely want to convey a message, and a message of thanks to the ITU Secretary General. I should not have ended my participation without saying this. I think Amadou Toure made every African proud. And I think he brought very productive, very consequential changes in the workings of ITU and how this institution worked for the very people it should have started with. And these are the Africans, the citizens of developing countries. And he just did that. I think we applaud him, and we hope we can still make good use of him and of his talent and sense of success he has for Africa and the ideas that would work for us. Maybe in his other life, I don't know what he intends to do, but whether he's going to be farming. There is not much in the desert of Mali, but
President, if you need a driver, I bought my driver license a long time ago.
So I really just wanted to say thank you and make it in front of you. Thank you very much.
Indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Toure. And in fact, we're busy assuming that he's coming back home and he's going to farm, etc., etc. But who knows? He's proved himself on the world stage. Maybe Ban Ki-moon might be looking for a replacement. We don't know. We don't know. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that our panelists really helped us kind of unlock this conversation, and a lot of things came through, and some powerful words came through, and I'm not going to say them all, but just to leave a few, and I think the President started it off really well by saying, look, this is about transformation. The bottom line is whatever it is that you're doing out there, you have to think about who it's for and why you're doing it, and it is to make a difference in the lives of ordinary people right across the continent. If their lives are not improving, then it doesn't matter what we're doing. It doesn't matter what we're thinking about and what we're plotting and coming up with these fancy apps. At the end of it all, every single African on this continent really has to have his life transformed by these interventions. It's time to take action. We've heard about accelerating the best ideas here in Africa, affording opportunities to these young people. It's not good enough just to teach them and show them what can happen. We actually have to take a chance and put our money where our mouths are, as we're seeing with some of these private sector interventions. Partnerships, PPPs, we hear about that all the time. Rwanda Online is a great example of that. But I think what a lot of the private sector is doing and meeting with government halfway, if we do it together, we can do amazing things.